So, welcome everyone to the November 28th LWL, Live, Work, Love Hartford. This is a non-profit, non-financial group. We're just volunteers that want to share good information about the city. I'm Jennifer Cassidy. I'm one of the steering committee members, along with Carrie Hammond, Peter DeMalley, Tom Swar, Donna Swar, Yanel Taran, and Jim Boucher and Jeff Stewart are not here. So welcome to MetroHartford Alliance office on Pratt Street here. We are fortunate to have, before we begin, if there are any Hartford residents that have not seen Donna Swar and they're interested in participating and signing a petition for a memorial in Bushnell Park, please see her afterwards. Okay, so David Griggs is the new president and CEO of the MetroHartford Alliance. He has a bachelor's in urban planning and regional analysis and a master of planning, both from colleges in Buffalo, New York, and he did some early work in his career in a little county in western New York, Orleans County, which is where the county that my town is from. So
I love Orleans County.
Yes, and he did some work in the Buffalo Niagara Enterprise Zone, and most recently comes to us from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. He has a long resume and a lot of ideas, but we're really looking forward to having him turn around the economic development in the city of Hartford. So I'm going to let him talk about all his stuff. And again, thank you for coming. And if any of you have ideas about people you'd like to see at LWLs, please let us know, because we're always looking for new ideas. So without further ado, David Griggs.
So the mission of the MetroHartford Alliance probably looks very familiar. The mission is to attract jobs, talent, and capital to the Hartford region. That mission isn't changing. It's the methodology that we'll use, and we'll get into what that methodology is as we go through this. The vision of the organization has changed. So when we looked at the mission and the vision, we still need to bring jobs, capital, talent. The vision, though, is for us to be a top-performing economic development partnership. And that's a very specific thing, at least in my world, in economic development. And the key thing here is the partnership. The title that was used for today was that economic development is a team sport, and it is. And we can't be successful at the Alliance unless we're developing great partnerships, not only in the city of Hartford, but in all our surrounding towns, but also in our surrounding regions. So New Haven becomes very important to the region of Hartford. Bridgeport and Stamford become very important to our region as well. It doesn't mean that we're the same economy, because we're not. You know, Hartford is a unique economy, very different than what Stamford, Bridgeport is, very different from what New Haven is. But those economies do feed off of each other, and it's important for us to recognize where we can play together, how we could be cooperative for the betterment of the state of Connecticut. So what is the Hartford region? When I got here, one of the first things I asked was, what's our region? And depending on who I asked, I could get any number of different answers. If I asked CROG, they would tell me it's 38 towns. If I asked the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, they have 29 towns. If I ask, and I forget all the different groups, but every group had their own definition of who we are. And who we are becomes very important, because then we start to develop data around who we are. So we worked with our board to come up with a solution for this, and where we ended up was where the federal government and any other site selector or region that's comparing themselves to Hartford, how they would look at us, and that's through the MSA, the Metropolitan Statistical Area. It's what the federal government uses nationwide to describe economies. The thing that makes this definition a little bit unique for us here is that it's based off of county data. Right. Thank you. Right? So what this map actually represents for the geography majors in the class here, there are 3 counties in there. And so when the federal government is looking at our region and trying to determine who we are and how we operate and how our economy works, they look at those 3 counties as what makes up the Hartford economy. So that's Middlesex, Tolland, and Hartford counties. So that's the region that the MetroHartford Alliance on the economic development side will represent. This is also the region that when a site selector in Chicago is, or in Seattle, let's say it's Amazon, because that cat is well out of the bag, they're going to look at us and they're going to say, all right, is Hartford the right size? Because if you remember, Amazon said that any region that wanted to compete for that project had to be at least 1 million people. Population, the floor was 1 million. If we took any other definition, other than the MSA, Hartford would not have qualified. But our MSA and the way Seattle was looking at us, we qualify. So having our data match what people are looking at us as becomes very important. Because if Seattle and Amazon says you're 1.2 million people, and we come back and say, no, we're 998,000. Well, what data are we using? So what we say about ourselves has to match what people think about us.
If you're defining this area to get to a number of 1 million, let's say, to satisfy that proposal for Amazon, because that was the example that you gave. But cities that have 1 million point whatever, they're not using, that's probably 60 miles long, if not longer, and side to side. So they're not defining themselves in 120 square miles or more, 180, I don't even know how many square miles. So it seems, I don't know, questionable, I guess, at best. How do we defend that definition, I guess?
The Minneapolis-St. Paul region is 16 counties.
16?
16. And that's what the federal definition of the Minneapolis-St. Paul MSA is. 2 counties in Wisconsin, 14 counties in Minnesota would probably engulf the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Yep.
But the MSA for Hartford is still very significant. That's 1/3 of the state population.
Yes. Yes, and it is back to why would we use that? It is what the federal government defines us as. So all of the data that is out there, be it census, be it BLS, be it BE, whatever it is, it's all going to be based off of that map. Yep.
Just a fun fact on this subject. If the entire state of Connecticut were a single county, it would not even be the largest county in the country. It would be like 5th.
Yep. So, is there a...
It seems that you're by using the Hartford metropolitan statistical area, you're selling Connecticut short. The way I would approach it is look at the size of the Seattle metropolitan statistical area and compare it to the size of Connecticut, and those two are about equal.
Well, yes, but the way the federal government defines it is by commuting patterns. So they look at a region, an economic region, based on where people live and where they work. So it's a bit like a percentage thing where 50% in Seattle is not 50% in Connecticut,
Right.
but it's still 50%.
Right.
So it's the best way for us to compare apples to apples. Even if the geographies are completely different, it is what our draw is economically. It's where we draw from.
The MSA, you have uniformity, you have apples, plus it is also applied economic development, public health programs,
Yes.
CDC,
Yes.
NIH, and a host of them.
Yes, yes. The state of Connecticut is, as we know, is a little bit unique in that we don't have counties anymore. The lines technically still exist, but we have no administration of a county government. So that's why it becomes a little challenging. Doug?
Here's one other statistical area that I'm sure you know, the combined statistical area, and there's one of those here too.
Yes.
In this same thing, it does include the Springfield metropolitan area, which has arguably a lot more back and forth than Hartford does, even with New Haven or Middletown.
Yes, yes.
And I'm just curious about where that fits into the mix.
Well, there's
Well, especially from where you came from when you had a statistical area that went into Wisconsin.
Yes.
And you got this big, long border that on that map there, and all of a sudden goes into no man's land, but
Yes.
it really isn't. Because
Yes.
of the way that the actual content.
This is one way to look at our region. It is the way that the data flows about our region. I can tell you slightly differently that businesses won't limit themselves to what an MSA is. And for that reason, and I probably shouldn't say that with the camera here, but Yale becomes part of our region, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because if I'm a business and I'm looking at Hartford as a potential option, and how long does it take you to get to Yale from here? 35 minutes?
Yeah, 35.
35 minutes. How is that not part of our region? Right? How is it that we shouldn't say that a business has access to Yale? They do.
How far is everything from Austin?
I'm sorry?
Austin at the beginning.
How far is everything from Austin? Well, drive time, everything from Austin is a couple hours. That's just in the city limits. But to your point, a business is going to look at us. They're going to make the cuts based on that MSA data. But then when they really start to look at us and we're able to say, listen, here are the universities that you'll have access to talent from. If we're not including Yale, you all should be yelling at me.
MetroHartford, we have to look beyond it, what is logically beyond it, and that means New Haven County with Yale and the other universities down there. And we share a commuter rail line, and we share a highway, I-91, and we share a workforce to some degree.
Yep.
And we also look to the north a little bit with Springfield,
Yep.
because we share a workforce
We sure
and
do.
other things, and a highway and a commuter rail. So
Yep.
an
Airport.
Yep.
Yeah, terminal at Union Station. So why not think of what Doug Fisher created with his Minds Matter brochure when he said the knowledge corridor is the 7 counties. So 3 around Hartford, 1 around New Haven, and the 3 around Springfield, which is now all of a sudden the same population as St. Louis and Denver in half the area.
Yes. I could tell you that county lines and town lines don't matter, but state lines start to matter.
In what way? I mean, I understand that there must be an answer, but is it rational and economic?
You don't want to know.
It is rational and economic because my job is to help create wealth within this region. And within this region are all the residents and businesses. I work for Hartford and for the Hartford region. And when you cross that invisible line when you go into Massachusetts, that tax revenue for the company, for the spinoff, a lot of that starts to stay into Massachusetts. So that line starts to matter. And I'll relate it to Minneapolis-St. Paul. We had 2 counties in Wisconsin. Those 2 counties were great for workforce. We could talk about the workforce and how we can bring them over, but I'll be dipped if I was going to put a company into Wisconsin. You know, my investors were all Minnesota. So the state lines start to matter. Look, if Massachusetts wants to start selling Hartford and bring companies down here, I'd welcome them to. I don't think it's going to happen. Just to reground everybody in what the MetroHartford Alliance is, we also have a few different entities that make up the alliance. The CTIFS, which for those of you not already registered for the big insurance market summit tomorrow, it's sold out, sorry, but that is a work of the IFS, Insurance and Financial Services Sector. Connecticut Health Council, which is all focused on the health delivery systems in Connecticut. HYPE, which is Hartford Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs. This is a very important piece to what the MetroHartford Alliance will be doing moving forward, because it's about talent. And economic development today is as much about our ability to attract talent and retain talent as it is companies, because companies now follow talent. 15, 20 years ago, talent followed companies. That's not the way it works now. So if we're not out actively trying to attract talent and retain it, we'll lose. There's talk about us starting HOPE, Hartford Older Professionals and I think we should do it.
So you're going to reserve that. The history of HYPE is different. HYPE, the E in HYPE, entrepreneur is an add-on.
Yes.
If you look at the history of HYPE going back 10 years, it was more a social networking thing. It was more to build social capital.
Yes.
The E actually was more like e-harmony and not entrepreneurship. You got to keep that in mind.
Well, innovation space that we have, and how should the MetroHartford Alliance fit into the innovation space? Because we've got a lot going on here, from the Techstars, from Startup Boot Camp, the maker space that's coming in across the street. There's a lot going on here. We need to get our arms around what that is so that we can market it to the world. And then the other piece that's not up here that you'll start to see more of next year is the Hartford Chamber of Commerce. So one of the other things that the Alliance is the Hartford Chamber of Commerce. And we've I don't know if we've lost it or what, but we're gonna put some more emphasis behind what the Hartford Chamber of Commerce is, how it interacts within our city, how it interacts with the neighborhood business groups, and really get a little bit more grassroots with that side of who we are. So I thought it'd be fun to give you a little preview of what we're going to look like moving forward. Hartford Chamber of Commerce on one side, which will focus on the policy and advocacy, small business assistance, and networking and events, all the things that you would expect out of a chamber. On the other side is the Economic Development Organization, designed to build and foster public and private partnerships, support growth in our key industries, and retain and grow and recruit talent. In the middle, shared functions, so the back office of those two organizations that will be housed here as well. What does it look like? Maybe this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but I think it helps to really understand what that looks like, who's doing it. You'll see on the Hartford Chamber side and we'll keep this quiet. Julio Concepcion will be the new executive director of the Hartford Chamber. And on the EDO side, we have a national search going on right now to find a great professional economic developer to help on the EDO side. Then you can see in the middle the shared functions of the organization. Julie Daly-Meehan with Nancy Wheeler's recent announcement of her retirement. Julie Daly-Meehan will be stepping into that role. Brian Boyer, Chief Marketing Officer, he's been essentially serving in that position now for a while. And then Linda Mitrick, who's our CFO, will be handling all the operations of the Alliance. The fun part, the deliverables. So this is where we'll be developing a report card that we'll be sharing to our community about how we're doing. Top line goals on the left-hand side, grow and retain jobs and investment. Right? That's pretty basic. Attract and retain talent. Again, it's a core function for what we should be doing. Market the region. This is something that I don't think we've done an awful good job of in the recent past. I hear people talk about, oh, Connecticut's on the bottom of every list, and we're just horrible in everything. And yesterday, Wallet Hub came out with the most charitable states in the country. We're number 5.
Of the top or bottom?
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're 5. Now, why would that? You could say, all right, most charitable, but why does that matter? It matters because it tells somebody from the outside a lot about who we are, doesn't it?
They're just jealous.
But wouldn't you want to be around those type of people? Wouldn't you want to be part of that group? So you can say, all right, charitable, whatever. U.S. News and World Report a few days ago released their best states for 2018. And I'm sure everybody's thinking, well, Connecticut was surely, if it's a 2-page report, we're on the second page. No, we're on the first page. We're number 24. We're at the bottom of the first page, but we're on the first page. So this is what we need to start feeling about ourselves. Part of what the Alliance needs to do on that number 3 is, in some regards, we need to have a regional therapist.
Exactly.
Right?
No more naysayers.
If you heard your kids talk about themselves the way we talk about our region, right, you'd have them in therapy.
Yeah.
But yet we do it every day, and we're more than happy to get on an airplane and go somewhere else and tell them about how bad we are. But we're not. Can we fix a few things? Yes. But show me any place that's got it all done perfectly. Nothing left to do. Don't exist. Develop market competitiveness and regional engagement. So this has a whole lot of words, but it's really about how do we compete as a region. So when somebody shows up at our front door, are we ready to win? We have to be able to operate as a team across town lines, between the state and the city, between the city and the town, all of us. We have to learn how to compete as a team. And then finally, secure organizational sustainability. Because if there's one thing about economic development, is it takes time. And if we're not building something that's going to last, then it's going to fail. Because you can't go out to the world. You can't try to sell somebody something show up one time and expect them to buy it. You've got to go out, you've got to tell them who you are. They're not even going to keep your card. Show up the second time, tell them the same things. They might look at your card. It's not until the third time where they're like, okay, these people are actually real. I'm going to keep their card. Maybe I'll give them a call. This is just it's the world of sales in some regard, right? But the thing that we're selling is our region. So we have to make sure that this organization is set up long-term for the sustainability for us to be around a long time, regardless of who is in any of those positions that we showed. You know, and that's a little bit of what we need to do internally, is we need to build internal processes that will work regardless of who sits in a particular seat. So you could see core strategies, metrics. How will we measure our effectiveness? How will we tell you, report back out to the community how we're doing? How will we report back out how the community is doing? These are some of the things that we'll use to measure that. And I think it's important that, you know, we share it, good, bad, or indifferent. Analyze, try to tell you why some things are the way they are. Come up with ideas on how we can improve some of the regulatory processes that we have, if that's what's slowing us down. Whatever it is, try to identify it, bring together the people who can affect change, and let them do it. Now. Yes.
So this is related to the first point you made about the MSA.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, before you do that matrix, anything, you have to get your numbers, your data scientists, your research, and you have done that. I saw your posting, you're hiring somebody
Yep.
for doing that, and that's excellent. I've been 30 years in the state and actually in the region, and I've seen, as an economist, we have great ideas, great economic plan, but they really falter during implementation. Nobody measures anything. They go to the next new thing.
Yep.
And it always occurs. Innovation hubs, 2008, innovation clusters, 2012, now we have innovation places. The jury's out on that, at least as far as I'm concerned. But there's still no metrics, really, and that hurts us. It hurts the outside investments too. So I'm glad you have taken that initiative. So to have that up front, it is a serious problem in the state. It's not unique to Hartford. You had the commissioner, Smith, literally apologize in the Hartford Business Journal less than a month ago that they got the data wrong. They could not take the economic programs and quantify it with jobs created and all that. That's the commissioner of the state. I mean, and she apologized right there. So we need to get that. We need to have a yardstick, which is literally a yard in every town on the planet, I guess.
But, yes, and I, you know, we had some of our metrics up there. We have some that we still have to build, but I do think it's important that we measure our success and we report out where, you know, because some of it is, you know, because we don't have data to go back on. So how many new leads can we generate in a year? We have no data to fall back on to tell us it's 20, it's 50, it's 100. So, you know, we'll use, you know, whatever data we can, experience from having done this before, and then we'll come up with a very good number and we'll report out how we're doing on it.
So, I have not been in the air, I mean, I've been here a while, but not like ancient amounts of time. And what you hear a lot of people talk about here is especially with Hartford, and so what I'm hearing from this gentleman and even some of what you showed, is that sometimes it goes in fits and starts. So my question to you is, if this kind of program, MetroHartford Alliance, has existed before, this kind of move toward building the the kinds of things that you're working on. I don't want to use the wrong terminology.
Mhm.
What exactly is different under your leadership and approach from what has been done before?
A couple things. One, it'll be a data-driven approach. Just having the ability to adequately describe who we are, what we are, what our competitive advantage is. So when we will be industry specific, so we're not going to go out and just tell the whole world, come to Hartford, though we'd love them to. Our sales pitch has to be very pointed and very directed at certain industries.
So it was too sweeping before?
Well, quite honestly, I can only talk about what I'm going to do
Okay.
and what the organization will do moving
Fair,
forward. So we'll have a data-driven approach that's industry-specific, and we're going to go out and sell it. We're going to go to trade shows. We're going to go to site selectors. We're going to be on the road. We had to build a travel budget. We had no travel budget. You can't sell. You can't wait for somebody to come into your front door before you can sell to them.
And I wasn't looking for you to be negative about what was there. It's just that obviously if we don't know the history, we're doomed to repeat it. Right?
Yes.
So if it didn't work before, we need to know what wasn't working so we could do things differently moving forward, yeah?
Yes, and this will be different.
Okay.
Yep.
A few weeks ago, I attended a regional conference about the future of the region, and the keynote speaker was the senior vice president from Stanley Black & Decker. It was, for any of you who aren't familiar with the presentation, profound. As far as the commitment, and for those of you who know the city, Stanley Black & Decker is building their entrepreneurial center at 1 Constitution Plaza.
Well, we'll see it.
Specifically because they see the future of this region. Our good friends in Springfield were a little hurt because it was all
Yes.
about Hartford and the Connecticut region. But it was so exciting to listen to their corporate point of view of the future of the state. And I can only imagine that you are all over. As a matter of fact, I think you are. And it was just simply an amazing presentation to understand how they're looking for talent, immigrants, people, great paying jobs. It's everything we want to see from the region.
Yes. Yep. They're talking the talk.
And walking the walk.
They put their, use whatever term, money where their mouth is. They're doing it. You could walk down the street and peer in the windows. It is really amazing, and that's great corporate leadership.
And by the way, they also were talking about bringing in the educational assets in the state, which was very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Community colleges up to Yale.
Yep.
They were talking about reaching out everywhere.
We need it all.
So I know there's some people in the room who have been involved in a number of efforts, I'll put it that way, organizations, about promoting Hartford, the region, regional assets. And Bill Hosley hosted a really good, it was a panel discussion with the potential mayors, and that was a really good discussion to talk about tourism in the area.
So if we think about, for me, tourism in the business continuum sense, it becomes extremely important because it's often the first chance we get
To make an impression?
to show somebody, to show a decision maker who we are. So, very important.
So is there something that's going to be done with respect to tourism?
From us? No.
Where would that fall under? Under whose jurisdiction? The state.
Well, right now it's the state. The state has, charge of all the tourism dollars. We don't have a CVB necessarily, a Convention Visitors Bureau here in Hartford. And if you look at the metrics, the things that we're going to have you judge us against, tourism doesn't fall in there, so we need to stick to our knitting.
Just to amplify that point, I'm on the State Culture and Tourism Board, and they don't have any kind of policy pertaining to specific places, so that if Greater Hartford wants to get the $1 billion it has invested in cultural assets working for us, that leadership is going to have to come from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I think Metro Alliance, we all need to be able to answer the question, if not you, who? And because it is the way a region makes a first impression, mm-hmm. and it may be soft in terms of the larger economic impact, but places people want to visit and places that make that kind of positive first impression, which we have huge capacity to do, are doing the marketing job that you have identified as central to your mission. And if that isn't marketing, I don't know what is. So.
It is absolutely correct. It's marketing, but the marketing that we're doing, the audience that we're trying to hit, isn't necessarily the tourist market. It's the business decision makers and marketing to their business decision making.
And yet, wouldn't having a nuanced understanding of that separate market help with?
It absolutely does. When you look at regions that do it well, the messaging around tourism and the messaging to businesses, there's a thread that runs between them.
I mean, not to dwell on this, but just to use Buffalo as an example, mm-hmm. About 5 or 6 years ago, Hartford and Buffalo went toe-to-toe to try to get the National Trust for Historic Preservation to have their big annual meeting here. And a lot of time and effort and even money. The state pledged, I mean, there was a lot. We lost. And we lost to Buffalo. And we lost to Buffalo in part because Buffalo really, really wanted it and really cared and had I would say, a sophisticated, self-identifying relationship mm-hmm. with that part of who they are, yep. Even though I would also argue we have more.
Yep.
So.
Yes, sir.
We've talked a lot about regional collaboration, but we pride ourselves on being 169 separate towns fighting for our grand list.
Yeah, we
so
do.
How do you promote cooperation in that environment?
169 dog
you're absolutely correct. We had barely gotten off the plane when we moved here before we realized that there were 169 towns, because they're quick to point it out at the airport. Welcome to one of. But when you think about how do we compete, right? How do we compete? We can't. One town in Connecticut can't compete against a region in, I don't care where, Iowa. They can't. So if for no other reason than logic, on competition,
Hasn't worked
right?
so far.
But here we are at a crossroads, aren't we? We went through an election. We said we need to do things different. We need to do things different. What's the tagline for our state? Still revolutionary?
Yeah.
Still revolutionary. Well, if there were a revolution today and you recreated the state of Connecticut, would you recreate it with 169 towns?
No.
For what we do, for what the MetroHartford Alliance will do in terms of going out to attract business, we have to look at a region. And if our economy wasn't regional, I-84 and the I-91 wouldn't look like they do every morning, right? People obviously are going from someplace to someplace every morning and every night. So our region, the economy is regional, right? I think we can all agree on that. Even if we can't agree to 911 centers, we can at least all agree that our economy is regional. So let's start with something simple. And then how do we use that and go out to compete? Yes.
So what the Chamber of Commerce will be doing that the Metro Alliance is not doing already? I thought the Metro Alliance was the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
So what would be the new designation for that?
Because, yes. So the MetroHartford Alliance needs to, when we think about an economic development organization is a regional entity that will work with multiple chambers across our region. The Hartford Chamber of Commerce will focus on businesses within the city of Hartford. Small, medium, large, doesn't matter. And the nature of the work is very local. The nature of the work for an economic development organization becomes global. So we'll be looking at who do we have locally, what are our sectors of strength, and how do we then go out and market them globally. And that's something that a chamber just wouldn't do. The chamber is focused on the geography that they represent and helping those companies overcome whatever obstacles they have to grow. And an EDO or economic development organization is a bit bigger, broader, and not as localized. Though without a strong local economy, there's not much to go out and market.
So it's an extension to her question. There was an article literally a few days ago in the Business Journal, and this might be a confessional on your part. You literally said the small business within Hartford haven't been well represented by the Hartford Chamber. We need to be more intentional in our approach.
Mm-hmm.
I know as a small business person myself, we have been really, we are not a big corporation, we are not the Aetnas, we are not a big hospital or so on. They've been really, small business has been really marginalized. And you can see that, and that can be empirically proved. We can look up your membership roles and contributions and so on. But I'm pleased that you have the Chamber of Commerce now with the focus on small business. We need that. That's where the growth is, and that's where you will have economic inclusion.
Yes.
It's important.
In the months, I came here in March, and I spent a lot of time just listening to what partners, other companies, neighborhood associates, how people felt, what we were doing right, what we were doing wrong. Please keep doing that. Please stop doing that. But our small local businesses felt marginalized, and that came across loud and clear. I can't guarantee that we're going to have a great answer or solution in the first 60 days of rolling this out, but I think having an executive director that's going to wake up every day and think about this and try to find ways to help the businesses within the city of Hartford is a good first step.
Now, I was actually hoping you would just sort of close this with the way that we can help you. When you think about the way you sell the Hartford region, what are your sort of key talking points? What's your 30-second elevator speech?
So that is one of the, and my apologies for not having it, but our research person we just hired, he starts January 2. And a lot of what that 30 seconds, so if you had 30 seconds on an elevator with Anderson Cooper, what do you want them to know? And we need that. And we need to have all of you know that. And that's one of our deliverables for next year. So thank you for bringing that up. My apologies for not being able to give it to you today. But it is absolutely something that we need to do, because we need people that when you get on the airplane and they at Hartford, what's Hartford?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we want to be.
Yep. And
Give
so,
us
so, thank you, and we will.
Thank you.
Thank you.